Over the years, I've taken you to some interesting places around Montana. Well, the place I'm going to show you today just might take the cake. If you watch my videos regularly, you'll know that last week I took a trip along the northern part of Montana. We drove all along Highway 2 along what's known as the High Line that goes through a bunch of little towns, and I gave a tour of the little towns, and finally we ended up in Glasgow, Montana. So this whole part of Montana is prairie, it's ranch land, a lot of wheat growing goes on up here, and as we talked about in last week's video, there's very few people up here as well. As you can see in this chart from the Washington Post, Glasgow, Montana has been rated as the most isolated town in the lower 48 states, and as you can see as we drive around this part of the state, it's pretty wide open and just not a lot of people or towns anywhere to be found up here. In all my travels, I've been to Glasgow quite a few times as I head east out of Montana, but I had no idea what existed just 16 miles north of Glasgow. It's one of the strangest places I've ever seen in my life. It's a ghost town, but not really, because people still live here. It's not like the ghost town we toured a couple years ago that you can see here. It's tons of abandoned homes, and there are still some people living here. Let's go take a look. So as you head through the town of Glasgow, Montana, you're going to be on Highway 2 heading east right here, and you go all the way through town, and you'll hit the intersection of Highway 2 and Highway 24, which you take north for 16 miles to the town of Ste. Marie. So as you head north on this highway, you can see it's just a lonely highway out in the middle of nowhere, headed to this town of Ste. Marie, which, as I said earlier, is one of the strangest, kind of creepiest towns I've ever been to. It's not truly a ghost town, and it's not, there's still people living there. But the reason it's in existence is back in the Cold War, the United States built a whole bunch of Air Force bases around the northern part of the U.S. For their nuclear defense capabilities, and one of them was here in Glasgow, and the town of Ste. Marie was built around this base, and so there's hundreds of homes that were built right next door to this Air Force base, and the Air Force base was built back in the 50s, and it operated from 1957 all the way to 1968, and then it shut down for a while, and then it operated for 5 years from 1971 to 1976. So once it closed down, obviously the vast majority of people moved out of there, and it says in the research I did that there's actually 1,200 units here in this town, and the people that stayed developed a condo association, and they control 234 of these units. But as you can see, most of the houses in this town are abandoned, and it's just quite the place. As we drive around here, you can see the roads are still just gravel and kind of dug up in areas they were doing work on. Every house you go by in this side of town anyway is empty and abandoned, and there are no stores, gas stations, or restaurants here, so it's just quite the interesting place here in northern Montana. And driving through this town, it was just kind of weird. You go through, most of the town are these abandoned homes like this, but there are parts of town that we'll go through in a minute where, right next to some of these houses, or there's a group of houses that are in good, decent shape, and people are living in them. And I looked up the website for the Ste. Marie Condominium Association, and they have a little description of the town, and it was interesting. Here's what it says. The first paragraph of their website says, "We are a group of lucky people who discovered the empty plains of northeast Montana to be an almost perfect and certainly unique retirement location, satisfying our longing for peace and quiet and a real opportunity to get away from the hustle and bustle." As you can see, that is correct. There is no hustle and bustle anywhere around here. In fact, when I was driving through this town, I didn't see one other person outside walking around. It just, added to the whole aura of this place. And just, again, one of the most interesting, strange, weird places I've ever been anywhere, not just Montana. So when this town was at its peak, there was actually 8,500 people that lived here. And right now, according to Google, the current population is 373 people. So quite a drop off. And in true Montana fashion, back in 2012, there was an anti-government group called the Sovereign Citizen Movement that paid a bunch of back taxes on all these abandoned places, and they were going to set up their own compound here, but the government and the people that lived here fought back, and they were run out of town. But again, just another kind of crazy story that goes along with this town, and it just kind of adds to the colorful history of this place. And if you're curious about the real estate here in St. Marie, this town or this area is not part of our MLS, so I had to get on Zillow. And when I did, there's two places for sale. One of them looks like it's attached, like a townhouse to a place next door, and it's listed for $32,000. It's 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, and they're all listed as condos because everything's in that condo association. And then the other place that's for sale looks like it's an actual single-family home, separate from everything else, and it's listed for $69,000, and it's a 1,340 square foot house that's 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. So if you're ever traveling around northern Montana, and as they said in the website, you're looking to get away from the hustle and bustle, you can go 16 miles north of Glasgow and come check out this town. It, again, one of the strangest, weirdest places I've ever been, but interesting history, and I never made it. I think it's gated off, but you can't get into where the actual runway and the base, the Air Force base was, but you can drive around this town and just check this out. And like I said, just one of those weird places that I've never seen anything like this. I'm not sure if there's any other abandoned bases around the country, but this one was quite the sight.
Thank you for watching our video. Please call, text, or email for more information, and don't forget to watch our other videos about Montana.